Welcome back to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio, radio for the ready-minded, where we focus on God, family, and country. And today we have a special episode. We're going to talk about some fun things. And so hopefully you get a lot out of it and you get to get your creative juices flowing, because we're going to talk about some creative things here today. But we wanted to also remind you to check out Jase Medical. That's JASE medical.com. And right now they have they just recently launched their daily medicines. So if you have regular medicines that you're worried about having on hand through an emergency, and that year supply of those regular medicines, you can now go get those. They have 75 medicines on their list. So if you click on Jase Medical, go to daily, and then you start typing in your medicine. If it's on the list, you can get it, and it's a year supply. So fill out, go to the Jase Medical, check it out, see if you have your medicines on there, and use code PrepperTalk to get $10 off. So today we're going to talk about our some lesser known skills in prepping. There's a lot of people out there that have some of the higher end skills that they want to talk about, survival skills, and so we're going to talk a little bit about some of those that may not be as popular, but they're definitely just as important. And then we have some fun things that we're going to talk about, some skills that we're going to call them lessons from inmates, the prison skills.
Well, it's a little bit from inmates, but like talking to some law enforcement officers who know the inside track on some cool things. Had a really cool conversation. I wanted to bring that to you guys so you could hear some of the things that were given to me this week that I learned from a good friend who's a detective, and he's got a lot of correction officer friends. He's also on the SWAT team, and he was a former Marine, sharpshooter, and just all kinds of cool stuff. So
hey, Scott,
my neighbor, and he's just awesome. So everything I've gleaned from him, I want to divulge today. And I think you guys as listeners are going to really enjoy it, because it'll make for some fun conversation and some weird ideas.
Hey, Scott, maybe bring your mic a little closer. There we go.
Well, let me do that again.
Much better. No, we heard you just fine, but okay. That's much better. Yeah.
It's a good thing I'm loud.
Awesome. So yeah, this is not firsthand experience, right? So
at least now my one day in jail, if you will, totally different experience.
Right. You can't quite develop those kind of skills for just a brief stint, right? It takes experience over time, and that's not the skills I had even thought about, honestly, other than watching the TV shows, right? Like Shawshank Redemption, or Escape Plan, those types of things. That's when you brought that topic up. Those are the things that came to mind, right? Just what I'd seen in the movies. I don't care to develop those kind of skills myself.
What was that Adam Sandler movie where he's in prison?
I'm not sure which one you're referring to there.
It was a football movie.
Okay. Longest Yard.
Longest Yard. Okay. This is funny because in the Longest Yard, you see things of like there's one guy that's smuggling stuff in all the time, the McDonald's guy, and he's got chicken nuggets. He's got all this. And you're like, how did he do this? Well, what's funny is that's actually happened, according to my friend, at his, or one of the departments that he was associated with. A guy smuggled in an actual full hamburger, went through the pat down. Like, they didn't do strip searches, but they went through the whole pat down and everything. And 20 minutes later, he's sitting there in the cell with a hamburger chowing down, and everyone's like, "Where'd you get that?" And he's like, "I brought it with me." And so it's just like, okay, there are ways to hide or smuggle contraband into prison all the time. Like, we've all heard the joke of somebody putting a file or a saw inside of a cake and bringing the cake to prison, right? That's the old Andy Griffith way back in the day ideas. But now it's like, okay, well, how do people get things in?
Mm-hmm.
Besides smuggling them up, they're
and I guess that would really apply to more maybe something SHTF, where you've got something that's valuable you're trying to get to, maybe somewhere where you're going to barter with it, and you need to conceal it somehow. Just trying to think of a more practical application for those of us who are not jailbirds, right? So,
well, you're as a higher class of individual, a non-lawbreaker such as yourself.
Well, I think another cool thing about maybe some skill sets that you might learn is like, how do you get out of a constraint? Like, for example, if you're in the movie, pardon me, not the movie, but in the book, 1 Second After, that a marauding band comes through and they tied people up and put them in little cages and stuff like that. So it's important to be able to learn how potentially, if you are in an area, if the power goes out and it's months on end and you got a marauding band coming through, you're going to want to learn how to keep yourself out of, or even learn how to escape. And not that we're promoting escaping from prison, but there's a lot of people that have been very creative in the ways that they've learned to escape from those types of things: handcuffs, constraints, ropes, ties, zip ties. Just learning how to get out of that kind of stuff can be very good if you're in a position where you need to do that. So that's, hiding something on your body in such a way that you can sneak it through a checkpoint, or hiding something, or learning how to mentally be prepared for when those guys ask you the question, do you have the following on you? And you got to keep, if you do, and you're lying and you're not used to lying, it might show up on your face that you're lying. So you got to have a little bit of that poker face skill set going as well. And so that's kind of some of the stuff that I think that, we can, maybe some of those skill sets we can learn for sure from the inmate type person.
Where I was going with Shane earlier was like, have you guys seen the movie Now You See Me?
Oh yeah.
The magicians, and they go in and they like steal like some microchip.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know.
Thing.
Yeah.
And they sneak it onto the back of a playing card, and they're like, hand trick, sleight of hand, right? Well, there's also like, you've got to also think of sleight of hand, but sleight of mind, right? How you say things, because like a lot of times in an interrogation, they will actually get someone to can like basically say, "Oh, I did it. I committed a crime," but they didn't actually do it. But by wearing you down and doing things like, and how you phrase things, eventually a person can get confused, make a mistake, and basically throw away their lives in jail, right? Well, the same in a survival scenario, you're going to be at your wit's end a lot of times, potentially, because you're going to be stressed, you're going to be tired, you're going to be underfed, you're going to be hangry. And so keeping your mind sharp and playing mental games now, and reading and being engaged at a higher level than just going to work and coming home, those are things now that if you start doing those now, they'll get you through those hard times. In prison, there's a lot of solitary confinement or solitary time. And what gets people through that without going crazy, especially like if you're in solitary? Mind games, playing games, making up stories, creating, fake scenarios to keep your mind occupied. Those are some of the things that I've heard are some of the best things to do while they're going through that, or thinking about something. So this is the optimistic side of things, thinking about something that you're really looking forward to when you get out, and creating it almost like vision boarding it in your brain. Okay, when I get out, I'm going to get this job, or I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to get this kind of, maybe get a car, and like you basically build out the whole scenario, and go live there while you're stuck where you don't want to be.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I was listening to a talk today, actually, and they were describing something. I think it was the Korean War, maybe. It was one of the prisoners of war. And they would ask them, when they came into the camp, they would ask the prisoners of war, what are your goals? What do you want to do when you get out of here? And the people that were like, I don't know, maybe this, maybe that, whatever. They're like, oh, we're going to put you in like lower security, because they're going to be they don't know. They have no goals. They really have no purpose. They have no dreams. They can easily control those people. But if somebody said, when I get home, I'm going to do this job, and this is how much money I'm going to make, this is all the things I'm going to do, they're like, you're maximum security, because you have goals. You're a leader, and we don't want anybody following you, because you're going to be able to lead them out of here potentially on a raid. So it's important to have goals and those types of things like you just talked about, Scott, but don't tell the prison guards.
Right.
Well, it's like the job interview, right? That you go to and say, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? Well, I'm going to be a president. I'm going to own my own company, those types of things. That's when you don't get the job, right?
Yeah.
Because they want people who are going to be good little servants, right? Who work for their paycheck.
Well, and it's also like, I want to say I heard statistics that if you didn't have goals, if you didn't have an ambition for after, your chances of surviving POW camp went drastically down.
Oh, it's same thing. Yeah, they said that the death rate was totally high, even though these people were in lower security. They got more food. They're more. It was kind of like the summer camp of POWs, and they would die more frequently because they had no purpose, aim, no goal setting, and that's something I think is, mental toughness is key.
Also, the same happens in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have something new to keep your mind occupied and focus and your body occupied, your quality of life, even though you've got all this freedom, your health and quality of life deteriorates quickly the less engaged you are, the less things you're doing, which is, to me, the number one reason why when I get to that retiring age, I'm not retiring. Like, I want to be working the rest of my life doing something, even if I'm not getting paid, even if I'm like fully financially retired, I want to be doing something to keep my mind and body active and sharp.
Yeah, I'm removing that word from my vocabulary entirely because I don't believe there is anything. And this is completely off topic, obviously, but anything. No, what retirement represents is what we've been told by our employers, by the powers that be. This is you're going to work till you're 65, then you're going to take retirement and you're going to go and have fun. That's anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, I don't like that word. I don't use the word retirement. But
it basically says to the body and to the mind, it's like, okay, now you're planned obsolescence.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you're gonna
break. Now you can die. Now you've done you've fulfilled. You have no more value. You can go and die now.
So that means, what have you got to do? Like, you've got to keep developing skills. You got to keep, like, you don't have to go to prison, but like, what if you are in a nursing home now? What if you're listening now and you're in a nursing home? You're worried that you're losing mobility. You're worried. Well, you've got to find things to do. You've got to find games to play and get other people involved as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think more than just like trivia, but like do puzzles, get engaged, get up, go around. Like, my favorite is, as a delivery driver right now, like, I see people out and moving every day, going on walks, taking their dogs out, doing different things. You meet people from all walks of life, and it's fantastic. But one of the things that I'm seeing more and more right now, because the weather's great, people out cycling, running, walking their dogs. They're just out. People gardening. And so it's like, okay, well, what are we doing? How are we spending our time? And one of the things you could do, and this is a skill that I think nobody really talks about a lot, but needs to be talked about more, is sewing. Because that's something you can practice when the weather's not good. You can be inside all winter long learning how to darn socks, right? Learning how to knit, learning how to crochet, learning how to actually hand stitch or sew. Because, I mean, take prison as an example. How many people go to prison and lose weight? Or even a worse scenario, look at what happened in World War II with the Jews in Auschwitz. They lost so much weight. Their clothes, like, none of their clothes fit. They all became rags, almost like you're walking around in a tent. And so having the ability to be able to tighten things and resize things in a survival scenario, hey, I'm going to finally be as skinny as you guys. I need to be able to get my pants to fit still.
Well, I think it's important when you're in a SHTF or SHTF, sorry, you can't go down to the store and buy another pair of pants. If you rip a hole, or if you rip your knees, or if you get a tear in your shirt or something, and so you've got to be able to darn those things and put those things back together. It was interesting. I'm planning a camping trip with the boys in our church. We're going to go and with the young men in our church, the youth group, and do a camping thing. And we pulled out the tents. And the screen windows on the tents had big rips in them. And we're like, who knows how to sew that can sew these, back together? Instead of buying a whole new tent, we just repaired it. So it's a good financial, thing as well, to learn how to repair, your thing. There's a great quote. Scott, you're going to have to help me out.
Use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without.
Yep. That's so key in prepping, is to make things last. And that's where we've talked about in several episodes. If you're going to buy something, even if it costs a little bit more and you're going to get good value, it's good, high quality, it's worth it, because it's going to last longer. It's going to be stronger. It's going to get you through things. But shoot, if you don't know how to sew, if you don't know how to hem your pants or bring your pants in or let them out or anything like that, you're going to find yourself in a weird place in an emergency.
Yeah, I think
not just.
kind of
I was going to say too, that goes for
sorry,
first aid too.
Yeah, that's true. I was going to say, before we get totally off the topic of the prison topic, is we have a good friend, Cache Valley Prepper, and he has built his own kind of escape and evade kit. It's very small. It's something you can always have on him. It's very undetectable, and so I think there is absolutely a need to have the skills and the tools to be able to get to, like you say, Paris, to get yourself out of restraints. And I mean, whether it could be kidnapping or ransom. I mean, so many things, potential things could happen nowadays that we should be prepared for, not just for ourselves but our family as well, in that same aspect. But I think part of that is we think about the jailbreak, right? And you see a lot of these movies where someone will break out of jail, they're running away, but they don't know where they're going, right? They have no idea where they're going. They don't know how to hide. They don't know how to find their way and get to where they want to go. So I think when we talk about orienteering, we think that's an important, and it's discussed a lot. But I think one thing that's not discussed a lot is wayfinding and pathfinding, and that's a little bit different. That's finding, that's without having a map or a compass, and really being able to find your way and pick a trail. It seems like common sense, but I've spent enough time in the backcountry to where I've had people lead me and I've led other people, and without that experience of picking a trail, picking a path, you can get yourself in, cliffed out or get yourself in trouble if you don't know the trails to look for, the things to look for, the signs to look for. And I think also along those same lines is tracking, or how to avoid being tracked, how to walk, how to step, how to roll your foot, those things that will keep you from leaving tracks in the wilderness to where you can be trained, not breaking twigs and sticks, and finding your way through bushwhacking and not leaving a path behind. So those are a lot of things that don't really apply to an urban setting, definitely more of a wilderness setting, kind of more bushcrafty type skills. But I, if we all think about, okay, when we're bugging out, people think, oh, we're going to go to the woods. Okay, if that's your plan, then you need to have these types of skills.
Right. Well, it's interesting because like we're kind of leaning back into the prison idea, but like the movie The Great Escape, which is based on a true story, right?
Yeah, that's a great movie.
They have to figure out how to change their appearance, right? Disguises, they're picking locks, fixing broken machines and engines, right? What?
Making IDs.
Making IDs. Nowadays, like things like a lot of people end up going to prison for copying car keys or copying other people's keys, right? And breaking and entering, right? So we'll not talk as much about breaking and entering, but we'll talk about like, okay, how to make a key. There are ways you can make a key, and you can do lock picking, but you can make a key with tape by taping it over and over again and cutting it out to match another key. I've seen it done. My brother-in-law did it, and I was like, that's ridiculous. And he's like, I learned this through part of my FBI training. And I'm like, you just traced a key on a piece of clear plastic, and then you put tape over it until it was thick enough to work. And he's like, huh?
Wow.
Okay. That kind of threw me. He's like, this is a slower way to do it. If you have a lockpick set, it's a lot faster. You can and I've got a couple lockpick sets.
Still takes a lot of practice. Yeah.
But like all of this, like going in to survival time, it's like you've got to just have your head in a place where you can adapt and you can get creative with whatever's around you.
Yeah.
Especially when it's limited. Like in prison, it's extremely limited. Oh, I wish I could get my hands on a pair of grenades so I could blow a hole in this wall and get out of here. Oh, I wish I could get some C4. Oh, no.
That's where the term MacGyver comes from, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's one of the reasons why I carry a Swiss tool, right? He carried a Swiss Army knife. They didn't have Swiss tools back then. I bet you he'd be carrying a Swiss tool rather than just a Swiss pocket knife.
I wonder what the new MacGyver series, I wonder what he carried in
I haven't watched that.
Me either.
I haven't either.
All the remakes, they're never quite as good as the originals.
Not. Yeah.
Recently I saw, I was watching a show, and one of the skill sets that I think that they showed on that was the ability to blend in. You talked about blending in and being able to kind of escape and evade in a wilderness setting, but that's also important in an urban setting. In a city, you've got to learn, like if you're being tracked by somebody, they're going to track you based on your hair color, based on your jacket, your sweater, your coat, your shirt, some of the things they can see in a crowd.
Yep.
Mhm.
So, clearly we watch movies all the time where the guys like they swap the coat, they grab the coat from the guy and put on a new coat, walk through the store, steal a
Mhm.
coat, put on a
Mhm.
new coat, walk through the other end. Knowing some of the routes in your area are going to be good, and knowing how to really and feel comfortable, maybe taking someone's coat just to keep yourself hidden or disguised in a different way, so that
Mhm.
you can escape and evade even in an urban city kind of setting. And
Yeah, I've got a. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say another scene that I saw in the show was they were captured, kidnapped. There was a kidnapping capture, and the person was able to, they were taking them through an office, and I don't know how they. I mean, it's in the script, right? Of course, so that's how it worked, right? It's obviously in the script, but it showed that they were willing to look around and see, what, they got a paperclip, and within a few minutes they had used the paperclip to get out of the constraints they were in, and so
Mhm.
they were able to break free. So just being aware of what's going on in the setting that you're in and what could possibly get you out of those scenarios, I think those are some skill sets that we can learn from
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
over on my blog and Prepared Guy years ago, I wrote a little blog about losing tails, about backdoors and rabbit trails. So
Mm.
that's something that I'm very aware of in an urban setting, like you're saying, Paris, is how to use is I try and use backdoors as much as possible. And backdoors, I literally mean backdoors, entering in from not the main entrance of a store if they have an alternate entrance, taking back roads rather than main roads, and how to spot people who might be tailing you. I don't have any particular reason at the moment why anyone would be tailing me, but it's good to be conscious, like you say, practicing the gray man. And I think part of
Mhm.
that is being conscious of everybody and everything around you. So, and then also rabbit trails. If you're in a store, how to identify if anyone's following you, especially handy if you're a woman, if you're someone vulnerable, and maybe an easy target.
What's funny is like in training for my prior delivery job, they talked about package securement. And one of the biggest problems they have is porch pirates. After you deliver,
Mm-hmm.
they'll actually follow you around because we
Mm-hmm.
wear these ridiculously noticeable uniforms with ridiculously noticeable vehicles, right? You can pick us out easily no matter where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And all they have to do is get 10, 15 houses behind you and just kind of watch where you're going. And they can come in and grab anything right after you set something down. So we have to be aware of that, take, stops and do quick turnarounds every once in a while just to make sure no one's
Mm-hmm.
just following us to snag packages. But it's the same skills. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. Number one, first and foremost, it goes back to situational awareness. Always looking for, and this is the thing I had to do, always looking for alternative routes and exit plans because I can't just do U-turns in those big vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just go where everybody else goes. I can't go down a back alley like everybody else can. I'll get stuck. I'll be like, all right, there's a tree and a fence and I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to back out. That's going to be horrible. So finding ways to get around through and bypass things, like you just have to be awake and aware. And the better you can research your areas that you're in, the better off you'll always be.
And this, I think it's especially important for moms, but dads
Mm-hmm.
too. Anybody who goes to the store with little kids,
Mm-hmm.
if you got more than one little kid, they're going to be running around. Everybody knows this. Every parent who's
Hard to
gone to the
manage.
store is going to be hard to manage. And those are the kinds of scenarios that kidnappers and human traffickers and child traffickers are looking for. They're looking for those moms that are distracted so they can grab the kid and run. And way too many of kids get taken because of that every year. And so having the skills to be able to identify that and maybe look at some of these creepers or stalkers ahead of time, make sure you know where your kids are all the time, just be hyper aware. You're going to be able to get yourself out of a lot of problems and save yourself and your family a lot of heartache and headache.
Yeah, and I think along the same lines, if you're able to also get some driving skills over and above what you learned just a lifetime of driving, some evasive driving skills, right? Whether you have an SUV or a sports car, they're very different, and how to best utilize that vehicle in a defensive situation.
What was that guy out there's on Shark Tank? want to say his last name was Hansen. He was a former FBI agent. Now he has
Oh,
a
yeah,
school
yeah.
down in Cedar City, Utah,
Yep.
for escape and evasion, teaching FEI tactics.
I know who you're talking about.
But like simple things like, okay, you can actually, if you're say your wrists are duct taped together.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen those scenarios. Though you can get out of that, and you don't have to have a knife on you, and it's just sheer force.
Jason Hansen.
What's his name?
Is it Jason Hansen?
Jason Hansen. Yeah.
Is that right?
But he teaches how to break through duct tape. Simple thing. Start up high, and you're just throwing your elbows down and back, and it'll snap the tape.
I think my daughter had a I don't know if it was from work or church, but she had an opportunity to be the example for that. And she's little. She's like 110 pounds soaking wet. Yeah. So, and she was able to break through the duct tape. And so it's not, you don't have to be strong.
No. So here's the challenge, guys. Go hop after you've listened to this, go hop on YouTube, look at a video that shows how to do that, and have everybody in your household practice it until they get it right.
Yeah.
That's a good skill to have. Another one is having really strong shoelaces. Paracord shoelaces are fantastic. Why? Because you can use those to saw through
zip ties or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can also use it to friction burn through rope. So like if you get tied up, you can unhook your shoes. If you can get to your laces, you can pull those out and use those as a makeshift saw. There's also tutorials of that on YouTube. But those are things that Jason teaches that I thought was fantastic. He actually came to PrepperCon, so I got to meet him there. But man, we had so much fun with PrepperCon. He came, we had Michael Hawk come, he helped a lot. And David Holiday, if you guys like wilderness survival, like wilderness living skills, David Holiday came. We had Matt Graham showed up from Dual Survivor. But David Holiday is like my favorite wilderness skills guy, because he's like the chillest dude.
Yeah, super granola.
Go out and just live forever in the woods, which he pretty much is. Like he and his wife and kids live no power, no electricity, no anything, and they're just out there chilling. And it's like you live one with nature, it's an easier life. And there's so many skills I wish I'd love to learn from him and spend more time out there as well.
I think another unknown or very little talked about skill, and this is, probably fairly easy to learn, and is to wash your clothes without a washing machine, like an actual, to learn how to hand wash your clothes. Because if crap hits the fan, we have no electricity, half of you are going to probably have dirty clothes for way too long because you don't know why doesn't my washing machine work? Well, unless you have a super big battery pack, you're going to need to learn how to have a bucket. You're going to need to learn how to have one of those wash boards. And you're going to need to learn how to hang your clothes to dry. And that's a skill set, I think, that's not as fancy or sexy as some of the other skills to learn, but it's definitely something. Hygiene is so important. Like I think the number one thing after the initial shock of maybe a disaster, the second thing that will kill more people is infection, disease, and just lack of proper hygiene. And keeping your clothing clean is a big part of that.
One of the things, I don't total shameless plug here, but one of the things that I got in my first order with Patriot Switch .com/Prepper Talk Radio. I was so proud. I'm so happy with this because I got their cleaning supplies and detergents, and it's all concentrated, so you dilute it. So I'm storing a lot less of it.
And that's what
I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much better, and it's all natural. So I'm like, I want to put a big stone by my garden, a washing stone, and then I can have my bucket, and I've got a washing and agitator system. But I want to put that by my garden so they then can have all the runoff off the rock go into my garden and feed my plants all summer long.
Well, that's what I did. I got some of that, took it up to my property. I don't want to put chemicals into my septic tank, right? I don't want to kill the bacteria in there. So their stuff's organic. And you use that as much as I can to try and keep the bacteria, keep that my septic tank good for many years. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
That's a skill to know, how to manage and maintain a septic tank. Because if the grid goes down, if you don't have a septic tank, you're digging a hole, and now you need to know how to do basic latrine duties. And most people don't know how to do that.
That's actually one of the things when I was building out my when I used to live in California, I was in charge of building out the community and making assignments for different things if we did have an emergency. And one of the big assignments that most people kind of overlook is the skill set of finding out where you're going to put your waste. It's good to have food and food storage, but it's going to come out at some point, and unless you're eating too many MREs from the military. But then even then it's going to eventually come out, and you need to have some place to take care of that, because you don't want to have that anywhere near where you might end up, getting it within the kids or somebody walking by. You want to have it far enough away that you're just not going to have any disease causing situations there. So learning how to properly dispose of human waste and that even the byproducts of your food stuff, you're going to learn how to do that, because you can't just burn it, not all of it, but you can't, maybe you can bury most of it, but you just got to know how to do that.
There are methods to do that. The problem is that the type of fuel you're going to go through, you're going to run out of that fast.
Yeah.
So it's a short-term, very, very short-term solution. You've got to, and again, you got to keep it all away from your water source. You've got to keep it away from your food. You got to keep it away from your family. Like open sores, if you get into that, you're going to be infected so fast.
And helping to teach your neighbors that same, those same techniques is going to help keep you healthy as well, keep the whole community healthy, right?
Well, I think that's why they say that, like, if an EMP does go off, why 93 or 87% of the population will be gone in 90 days. Like, I really believe it's going to be because of the issue of sanitation.
Sanitation.
It's one of the top things. It's one of the top things anyways. And that's, going back to our original, commercial at the beginning of the show, one of the other big things was not having the proper medications on hand. And that was a huge thing too, that people just who relied on those medications. So double check your jacemedical.com and get your supplies, because you're going to need them. And especially if they're life threatening or life sustaining medicines that you're on, you're going to need to have those. But I think, that is it. I think also another skill, and we kind of talked about this last podcast, Scott and I, was the leadership skills. When crap hits the fan, you're going to need to learn how to organize people in such a way that they're going to have the confidence that what you're telling them is going to work, and that you're going to need to have some organizational skills as well, so that you can organize people into the different areas. Like, listen, these are the things that we need. We need somebody that's in charge of, communications. We need somebody in charge of sanitation. We need somebody in charge of distribution of food. We need somebody, if you're going to have a little community and a neighborhood that's going to coordinate and get together, we need to have we're going to, who's going to guard, who's going to be on guard, and what are the rotations and what are the shifts, and having a leader that can organize those things or be a part of a leadership group that organizes those things is going to be really important. That was I think one of the first things in that 1 Second After book that they got together, the mayor, the chief of police, and then this guy who's the star of the book. They all got, and a couple other people got together in that first couple of days, and they started organizing people immediately to give people hope that, hey, we're all in this together.
We're organized,
and we're going to try to be organized as possible, so it's not a free for all and a panic attack.
Yeah, and a few things I got from that book as well, that I had written down, and mine is, you mentioned leadership. I had that on my list, but also just relationships and negotiating. Not necessarily bartering, but that's part of it. But negotiating, and maybe it is a hostage negotiation. Maybe those kinds of skills would be important, right? But in general, bartering, negotiating, being able to compromise and come to an agreement on things. I think that'll be very important.
Well, conflict resolution, part of that is negotiating, right? Getting all the parties to finally agree to a ceasefire, if you will, right? Creating a peace agreement. That's negotiation. That's conflict resolution. That's de-escalation. Like, the last thing you want to have to do if there's an argument is to pull out a sidearm, right?
Yeah.
Because then you've already lost. If you can de-escalate, you're in a better situation. Now, if somebody's already shooting, you don't want to try to de-escalate that. You want to get to a safe place and disarm the bad guy, right? You want to end it. There's a point in time where you can de-escalate things, and there's a point in time where it's too late.
Yeah, and along those same lines, obviously, I think biggest topic in prepping is guns. It's one of the big topics. Mm-hmm. So learning how to shoot, learning how to manipulate your firearm, being good with that. But also on those same lines is gunsmithing, knowing how to maintain your weapon and how to replace, having spare parts and knowing how to replace those. And I'm not talking gunsmithing as in, custom making a barrel and those types of things, but actually having the right tools and the skills and the know-how to maintain your weapon, replace parts on it,
so you're
and help others as well.
More along the lines of being an armorer, right?
Okay, yes, that's probably more appropriate.
Yeah, so like my buddy, he actually is a certified armorer for the police department on like 18 different types of handguns and six or seven different rifles outside of their basic ones that they use. And he's like, that's my favorite part of the job. He's like, I know how to put together and take apart every one of these guns, how to actually fix every single one of these guns. I know what the main problems are with each of these guns. He's like, and that's why I will always and only ever carry a 45 1911.
Oh, really?
And he's like, I can carry so many magazines that I win no matter what. And then he pulls up his vest that he's wearing, and he's got his 1911 there and 3 magazines next to it. And I'm like, I had no idea.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say Glock, right?
No, I'm shocked. I'm like, what, 1911? I'm like, all the
police
are running around town with Glocks.
The hardcore people are either Glocks or 1911. But anyway, this whole different discussion. We should have that discussion one of these days.
Well, I think
that's one of the lesser known skills that we talk about as preppers. We talk about, you got to get a couple of guns or 20, but we don't talk about maintaining them, knowing how to fix them. Right. But you say this all the time. 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3 is just right.
What about 7 or 8?
Yeah,
well, that's each kind, right?
I took a course last week or maybe 2 weeks ago about how to break down my AR and lubricate it and clean it, and then we took down there was pieces in there I didn't even know existed in that gun, and I'm like, who in the world made this thing? So it was really valuable for me to see it all broken down, every little piece, where everything should work, and then to know, hey, if these particular pieces bend or wear out or wear down, you need to have replacements on hand for all that stuff. And so guns is not just going out and shooting and being an expert sniper marksman. It's also knowing how to maintain and keep it for long term. If you treat it right, it's like a car. There's so many people I see on the side of the road with a flat tire or broken down whatever, and I'm like, I wonder if it's, there's obviously some dumb luck that just happens for people, but I also believe, and I have a strong believer, that if they would have maintained it on a regular basis, they would not have had that problem, or at least the chances of those types of problems would diminish greatly. Maintenance, it's better to have a routine in life in general, not just cars or whatever, but in life in general, consistently be routine about yourself. And I think that's just a good idea, to constantly be always maintaining things, keeping things up to speed, so that it doesn't wear out when you need it.
Amen. Totally agree.
Like I had to go to the locksmith a few weeks back to replace some locks and some keys. And it was interesting because I was talking to him for a while, and he saw my Toyota Sequoia, and he's like, "Oh, how many miles you got?" And I was all proud of myself. I'm like, "Yeah, I got 258,000 miles on it." I'm like, "It's just warming up." And he laughs, and he's like, is that the best you can do? And I'm like, "Well, my 4Runner had 351,000 miles before it, I had to let it go." And he's like, "I had 750,000 miles on my Nissan Frontier Frontrunner. I can't remember what it's called. Little pickup.
Yeah, Frontier." And
I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "You know what I did? I just maintained it." He's like, "If you maintain things, they last longer."
That's awesome.
Especially if they're Toyotas and Nissans.
Even a Nissan.
Even a Nissan.
He goes, especially if they're Toyotas and Nissans.
I'm not a Nissan guy at all. So
I had an old Nissan back before they changed it to Nissan. It was a Datsun, the last of the Datsun.
That was my first truck.
And what's that?
That was my first truck, 75 Datsun.
Oh, I loved that truck. Mine, I named it Rusty Datsun because one of my best friends her name is Jen Datsun. So if you're listening now, you know. And I always teased her that I'm taking her little brother out for a joyride. And Rusty was her little brother. Get it? Ah, funny. Anyways, but that truck just kept going and going and going. And I bought it. It was a piece of garbage when I bought it, and it just kept running and running. And I was like, wow, this POS is awesome.
I wish I still had it. It was carbureted, and it just kept going and going.
That's awesome.
I'm actually looking at some old Toyota Hiluxes carbureted, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should get some. I kind of want to.
Yeah,
it would be a project, but it would be an awesome project to have.
Well, that about wraps up this episode, you guys. Thanks so much for being on with us. Thanks for being a part of our skills. Hopefully you learned some things about what you can do, and you got the creative juices flowing. When you're in a situation, when you're in a situation at all, just make sure that you think about what you could do to get out of it and use those creative juices. You've got it in you to do it. Just a matter of practicing and using those skills. But you've been listening to Prepper Talk Radio, radio for the ready-minded. And we are here to help you learn more about God, family, and country, and help you be better prepared for whatever life throws at you. Have a great night, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See you next week.